My camera's having some trouble with like autofocus today. I don't know what's going on, so I'm sorry. Hi, how's it going? How's your family? How's the new year? This is my first video filming in the new year. So, hi. You're watching the Christiana 321. I am the Christiana, and what do you think of this new voice? No? Okay. Welcome back, everybody, or welcome if you're new. This week I've been uploading daily to talk about resetting for the new year, closing out 2022, and today we're going over every book that I read in 2022. I have, I don't know, maybe half of them as physical copies. The other half either I read as an audiobook and haven't gotten a physical copy yet. I may or may not, depending on if I liked it. Or if you watch sometime in the middle of the year, I think this summer, I unhauled a bunch of books to little libraries, and so I'm thinking that some of the books that would be in this video were in that video as being unhauled. So, I don't know though. Anyway, let's go through the ones that I have physical copies of first. If you've been around for a while, or if you've gone back and watched some of my other book videos, you may have heard of these. You may have seen them come up before. Especially some of these top ones. I'm just looking at my pile. I didn't organize them by like when I read them at all. If you like book videos, or my book videos, me talking about words and reading and stuff, I have a playlist linked down below of all my different bookish videos. Some of them are like this, where I talk about reading. Some of them are all the books that I got in a month. Some of them are reading vlogs, where you see me reading in various places and talking about, like, doing updates as I'm reading the book kind of thing. And those are a lot of fun for me, and some of them have done fairly well. A lot of them have been like normal videos, so we'll see. I have a few planned for this coming year, so if there are any particular books or types of book videos that you'd like to see, let me know in the comments down below. And you know, when you're down there clicking around, if you want to subscribe, like this video, I'd really appreciate it. Alright, let's get started. In 2022, I read 26 books. I was really hoping that number was going to be 27, but I spent too much time doing like school and work and socializing with my boyfriend, partner, guy, friend. Just going in order of how I pulled these from my bookshelf, and starting with physical copies, I read Tetris, which is a graphic novel that is the history of the game Tetris. Yes, graphic novels count. If you are not a big word count reader, or you want to get out of a reading slump, highly recommend graphic novels. Before this year, or I guess technically 2021 is when I started reading them. Before, I think the end of 2021 is when I started reading graphic novels. But before that, I didn't really give them a chance, and that's my bad. There's some really good ones out there. This isn't good. I did not consider the fact that there might be nonfiction ones. Really enjoyed it. I have a whole video on reviewing the graphic novels that I read as my like first graphic novels ever. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you want some more insight on the graphic novels that we're going to talk about, watch that video. But Tetris, great. Skyward is another graphic novel about this world where gravity doesn't exist. And it was very sweet. I very much enjoyed it. This was just volume 1. It's a whole series. And I said I was going to read more from the series. But then, I just forgot. But it was excellent. 100% plan on reading some more of that series. Alright, getting away from the graphic novels for a minute, I've got the getting away from graphic novels for a second, but the autobiography of an ex-colored man by James Weldon Johnson, also featured in a video I did where I tried to read 7 books in 7 days. I failed at that, but I came pretty close. Anyway, this book was excellent. Highly, highly recommend if you are at all interested in the race dynamics of the... I don't remember what time period it was. It was like shortly after the Civil War, I think. Shortly. It came out in 1912. Or this edition came out in 1912. If you're at all interested in race dynamics, mostly in America, I believe he travels to Europe for a little bit of the book, or at least he talks about going to Europe. But race dynamics in America post-Civil War, but not too post-Civil War, it's very interesting. He is essentially, he is a colored guy, black guy, but he is white passing. So at various points in his life, he lived as a black person or as a white person. And he talks about kind of the different effects that that had on him. It's not an actual autobiography. It is a novel by James Weldon Johnson, if I didn't already say that. Excellent, excellent book. It did... So, James Weldon Johnson was the first black executive secretary of the NAACP. And anytime you have somebody in a like political-ish type role writing a novel, 9 out of 10 times I've found, at some point in the novel there will essentially be an essay explaining their thoughts on one of the major themes of the book. Which is, like, it's fine. That's just what I've come to expect from authors in those positions. So, like, as long as you're not put off by that, like, weird, like, monologue kind of thing in the middle, it was very well done, very interesting, and yes, highly recommend if that's your thing. Also, this year I've tried to read a bunch of books focused on asexuality. People who do not experience sexual attraction or experience it differently than the most common experiences for all of the other sexualities. So I read The Goddess of the Hunt, which was a series of poems by Shelby Eileen, focused around Greek mythology with an asexual lens on, I want to say it was Athena. No, Artemis. It's been a while. Anyway, more info in my video on asexual book recommendations that came out during Pride Month. It was okay. It was strange. Poetry books are never my thing. And I'm sure some of the books in this pile I have not already talked about in a video, probably. Is my whole life just focused around making videos? Do I share my entire life in videos? Possibly. Alright. Also, asexual book recommendation was The Cybernetic Tea Shop, which is set in the future where there are androids and different AI technology, which in the last month there's been an explosion of the use of AI technology online. But it's a very interesting perspective where the main character is either asexual or demisexual and falls in love with an autonomous robot who, because it's autonomous and everything, can also feel love. And their relationship and some of the struggles that they have being a human robot couple, and the different the robot runs the cybernetic tea shop, and they experience prejudice for being non-human, and so it has a lot of relevant metaphor for how different groups are treated even today, if they are seen as less than human. But also very interesting by Meredith Katz. Carrots and Sticks Don't Work. This is a professional development book on the differences between motivation and engagement. I actually had plans to do a couple of videos on this book or this topic, because I actually have a lot of professional development books that deal with motivating employees, and the different thoughts behind how it can be done well, and the difference between motivation and engagement, but also like short-term versus long-term strategies. So it was very good. I don't think that it can stand alone. Like, it has some great ideas, but if you're in a management position, it's going to be really different. It being how to have a happy, productive workforce is going to be different depending on what field you're in, how big your workforce is, what you're walking into. If you are a brand new person or somebody who rose up through the ranks, two very different things going on. Large workforces, small workforces. If you've been a boss for a while and you're wanting to improve, you have to deal with the state that your team is currently in order to improve. So I think anybody who is in management or would like to be in management would benefit from hearing a lot of different ideas on the topic. But I did really like the Carrots and Sticks Don't Work book. Another one is not another professional development book, just another book, is You Know Me Well by Nina LaCour and David Levithan. It is a YA novel set in and around San Francisco around Pride Week, but it's also almost graduation, and these two unlikely friends become friends. One is, I'm gonna get this wrong because it's been too long since I've read the book. I think the two main characters, one is gay and one is lesbian, but they become friends and they work together to fix each other's lives, basically, helping each other to mend their relationships, both romantic and friendships. And sorry, I had some soda and it is bubbling up still. Fortune's sleeping on a Christmas pillow over there, and normally I film my Bookish videos in front of my bookshelves because it, feels very thematically on point, but this is my last video. I think I'm filming in front of the Christmas tree. I'm gonna take it down here soon, so I'm also gonna have to put away Fortune's favorite pillow because it is a Christmas pillow. And then I need to find something that is similar. The problem with Christmas is it happens at the beginning of winter and then if you want to decorate your house for the rest of winter, like, you just only stick to snow. I mean, you can leave your Christmas tree up. You can leave your Christmas tree up for as long as you want. I think part of the reason that my camera is having trouble focusing is because I keep getting light reflected in my eye, my glasses, and then it thinks that it's not a face anymore, maybe. The reason I'm having trouble focusing is because I'm me. Alright. Next book on my pile. Oh, You Know Me Well. It is very classic YA, teeny bopper kind of rom-com, very fun. I very much enjoyed it. Kind of book that you can read in a day. Kind of teen book where everything has to be fixed before graduation or before prom or whatever. But it was very cute. I like books like that, like laying down on a really soft pillow, you know? You just want to sink into it. I don't think, like, it. You might gather from my books, I like to have a variety. I can never just stick to one genre. I wouldn't only want to read the soft pillow books, but they are very fun and very nice. Alright, so the next one is called Bubble, and it is another graphic novel. This one is again set in a dystopian type future, just like Skyward, except instead of losing gravity, there are a bunch of these like monsters out and about, and main characters are monster hunters, and I like Skyward better. It had a lot of like similar themes and ideas and relationship arcs. This one is much longer, but it might only be one book. I don't like comparing books, but I do because I'm human. But apparently this was based on the smash hit podcast, I'm guessing also called Bubble? Doesn't say. I never listened to the podcast, but I think that does explain a lot. Yeah. Okay. Also, for my asexual ace rep books, I read Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. It is a nonfiction book about asexuality, and it does a really good job of covering a huge variety of topics within like asexuality, from the different types of asexuals. Like there are demi-romantic, there are gray sexuals, there are people who are aromantic, but not asexual. There are people asexual who are not aromantic. Don't think really talked about agendered people. I don't remember that in there, but also talked about how society conditions us to expect relationships to include sexual elements, and why compulsory sexuality can be really damaging, not just for asexual people, but for people, everyone. Not that asexual people aren't people. I just meant like all people, not just the topic of this book. And then she also did some intersectionality, where how race can play a part in your sexuality and how you feel comfortable coming out, and how your race can play a part, or like your subculture, wherever your family falls. Like if you're first generation American, or but how race and your family's culture can play a part in what the compulsory sexuality is for you, but also why that can make coming out more difficult. Specifically, she's talking about asexual people coming out, but also some of the concepts could be applied to any of the non-heterosexual sexualities. We've got a lot of books to get through. I'm sorry, you guys. Alright. So in December, this month, I read Blood Like Magic by Lizelle Sambury. She has a wonderful YouTube channel. I will try to remember to link it below. I think I've already... Well, no, I'm just gonna... Okay. So I'll link her... I'll link her channel down below if you are interested in how an author goes about writing a book. She's got a lot of great content. If you want to get into writing books, she has a lot of great content on tools that she uses or that she knows people in the authoring industry use. Love her videos. Some of them are quite long. She goes into a lot of detail. Am I just going to be blurry? Is that what we're accepting? So Blood Like Magic is about a coven of witches in Toronto, Canada in the near future, and you're following main character Voya as she is coming into her magic, which happens around puberty, and some very difficult choices that she has to make surrounding that. This is the first book in a duology. The second book is Blood Like Fate. I was kind of hoping I was going to get it for Christmas, and I didn't get it for Christmas, and then I've been to the bookstore twice since then, and I didn't get it either of those times. But with Blood Like Magic, I got it, like, the physical book, 3 years ago, or whenever it came out, before I moved to Wisconsin, and it just sat on my shelf for so long, so I decided I wasn't going to get Blood Like Fate yet. I know that I'm going to read it, but probably not going to read it for a little while. Also, Blood Like Magic I read via audiobook, which was excellent. I don't recall who the audiobook narrator was. She did an excellent job. And so I'm pretty sure anytime I start a series via audiobook, I'm usually going to finish it via audiobook. So I think I'll get the audiobook version of it first, and then once I've actually read it, then I'll get the physical copy. I just hope that there are still hardbacks out there, because I would very much like them to match. Also this month, also via audiobook, I read When the Curtain Falls by Carrie Hope Fletcher, also a YouTuber. Her YouTube is more, she is an actress on the West End, which is, British Broadway, basically. And I've been following her YouTube since before she even wrote her first novel. This is her third novel, and she has written several books since then. She wrote a couple of middle grades books and a short story novella kind of book, and then this last year she had another novel come out, so now I need to get that one. So When the Curtain Falls is a dual timeline of this play that comes out in the West End. In the first timeline, it is following the original production, and one of the main characters dies. So then flash forward to 2020, I think is when the book is set, and when the main character died, they shut down production way back in the day, and now for the first time they're re-putting on the play When the Curtain Falls. Yeah, anytime you've got like a book within a book, or a play within a play, or a play within a book, you always got to give a little bit of grace to the internal story. But I don't have a problem with it. Like, it seems like it would be an interesting play. I don't have a problem with the title. Like, it seemed a little anyway, because then also throughout the book, people are always arranging to meet when the curtain falls, when the curtain falls. So the title of the book is throughout the book a lot of times. That is my only critique for it. But so modern day, they're putting on the play again, and if you don't know, in theaters, there's very often ghost stories that go along with it. I think kind of inspired Phantom of the Opera. And so you've got all these different people that may or may not believe in the ghost stories, but this time the ghosts are, in this book, the ghosts are real. And so the ghost of the character who died in the first timeline is coming back and affecting the current timeline. And so there's kind of two different love stories going on. The love story that you're learning about from the past and the love story in the present. Dear Lord, a little while back I had problems with my camera focusing. I thought I fixed it, but now I don't know what it's doing. Alright. Only 2 more physical books, and then we get into the non-physical books, which I may not remember very well. Alright. So I started reading this a while back, like I think maybe August. I finally finished it in November. It's called The Edge of the Map by Johanna Garten. So this book, actually, the author is from a town that is like 10 minutes away from me. I want to do a book on Wisconsin authors, or books set in Wisconsin. I'm not really sure what it's going to look like yet, but this is one of the books that I want to cover, so I'm not going to go into too much. But basically, there was a hiker, or a mountain climber from Appleton, Wisconsin, named Christine Boskoff, and she was one of the, like, best female mountain climbers, one of the best mountain climbers in the world. She ran a mountain climbing expedition company out of Washington, and this is also a dual timeline, actually. Timeline number 1 is following her life from the time that she kind of decides to start mountain climbing to the time that she and her partner disappear on a climb. And then timeline number 2 is also spread throughout the book, so you get like a little bit of her life, a little bit of timeline 2, which is the expedition, the team that is going to try and find her, recover, either find her and save her or recover her body. This is a nonfiction book, so I was a little bit confused from, I forget if it was the prologue or the first chapter, made it sound like she's still, at the time of writing this, she's still out there climbing mountains. But at a certain point in the book, I had to look it up. No, she died. She very much died. So, sorry if that is a spoiler, but it is a nonfiction book, so. It is beautifully written. I do have one critique, so if you are the author of this book, don't watch this part. Click away. I've interacted with the author on Instagram, so there's a chance that she would see this. Probably not. But, I don't, like, there's no point in giving critique to authors for a book that is already published. But it is important to potential readers to know what they're getting to. So anyway, because of the nature of the dual timeline and it being a nonfiction book, near the like 3/4 mark or so, one of the timelines just gets very weird in the pacing. Like it just slows down a lot and starts describing in way more detail like the mountains and the area and all this stuff. And I feel like that was so that timeline 1 and timeline 2 like meet at the same point, and so she needed to put some fluff into timeline 1, whichever one it was, I don't remember now. So she needed to add some fluff in there, which was difficult. That's one of the reasons why it took me so long to read, is because in that part, like, I would read a couple of paragraphs and I'd put the book down because it felt like I was reading for a much longer period of time than I had been. Overall, great book. It really made me want to try mountain climbing. So because the author and the main Christine are from around here, I looked up to see if the mountain climbing gym that she went to in Appleton still existed. I don't think it does. I tried to find it. Also, it's by a different name and doesn't have the keywords in the website that I was looking for. So that's the edge of the map. I would recommend it. Just know that near the 2/3 mark or 3/4 mark, it gets there are some slow parts, but overall very interesting. An insight into a world that I knew nothing about. I will say, like, I know nothing about mountaineering, mountain climbing, rock climbing, any of that. And so she did a good job of explaining some of the terms and some of the different, like, details that someone going in with zero knowledge would need explained to her. But the thing that got me, I almost wish that I had like a map or something of some of the different mountains that she was talking about, because she would talk about a lot of, I guess, really popular mountains, and I didn't have a great concept of where they were in relation to each other, or like their significance, or like even what countries they were in sometimes. And so it would be great to have something to reference, or like she would talk about it once and then she'd bring up the mountain again later on, but not retell you some of the stuff, which, that'd be a waste of paper. But as somebody who had like basically no foundation, I'd already forgotten that mountain even existed. Probably would have helped if I read the book a little bit faster, with fewer breaks. But anyway, so having some idea of mountains and geography, probably a good idea. And then also, she talked about a lot of different people, because there were a lot of different people involved, which, like, if this was fiction, which it was not, I feel like some of those characters would be combined. People who, she interacted with once. There were just a lot of names to keep up with that, if this was fiction instead of nonfiction, would be combined into fewer characters, just because there was a lot to keep up with. But that's not the author's fault. It is a nonfiction book, and so making up names and facts and stuff wouldn't do so well for her authorly reputation. It is a novelization, how did she put it? Creative nonfiction. So it is like probably 99% fact, but it's written as a story so that like it's more interesting to read than just facts and figures. So it's got like descriptions and character thoughts and stuff that you can't 100% know. The conversations are written out as if they are conversations, even though the people who she interviewed probably didn't remember them word for word. But she talked to the people who were having the conversations, or read articles referencing the conversations or combinations. Anyway, very well done. Definitely recommend, especially if you have any interest in mountain climbing. Another one that I read by a Wisconsin author is The Woman Who Forgot Who She Was by Vivian Probst. This is part of a, I think, 6-book series. I have a lot to say about this book that I just don't have time to talk about. It was interesting. I didn't know really anything about the author before picking it up, other than that she was on the local author shelf at my local bookstore. But she is a major feminist, which there's nothing wrong with feminism, but some of the ways that she chooses to exercise her feminism, I wouldn't personally choose. But so the book is about this man and his wife. There is an accident where they lose their kid, or kids, and because of the trauma of that accident, the wife gets like permanent amnesia. But, and like also apathy. She becomes very much less empathetic, less emotions and stuff. She moves away to Wisconsin, or she moves back home to Wisconsin. He moves to England to be with his family, because she does not remember that she's married. She doesn't know who this guy is. What is your problem? Why are you so obsessed with me? I don't care that you think that we're married. The doctor seems to think that it's best for her to not have to re-experience the trauma, and so it's better for the husband to just go away. Sure, whatever. So this book takes place about the time that he decides, you know, it's been 18 years, a million years. It's been a long time since the accident. I'm gonna go and try and get my wife back. So he comes to Wisconsin, and he doesn't want to like scare her, I guess, or like trigger a traumatic episode. And so he is just pretending to be a townsperson. But one that just happens to know exactly all of her likes and interests. But turns out she's in financial trouble. And then she gets drunk and has a very long dream. And this book, almost all of it takes place in this dream world. And through it, she works through a lot of her personal stuff. And then, I mean, I don't want to spoil it. But basically, the book ends when she comes out of the dream and like one more scene worth of things happen. It doesn't feel like this book is a whole book. Like, it feels like it ends at Act 1 of a story, whereas most stories have like a 3-act structure, you know? Some have much more than that. I'm looking at you, Game of Thrones. I'm looking at you, Stephen King, probably. I've never read a Stephen King book, so it's not a good metaphor. But so it's not a super long book, but also just not a lot happens, and you're left with like a lot of openings for plot without a lot of closure, which, since it's part of a series, I think I need to read at least one more book in the series before I really judge it. But yeah, it really did not feel like a full book on its own, even one that is part of a series. Like, some amount of plot and action and character development needs to happen in each of the books, I think. But I don't know. I'm gonna maybe read one more to figure out what is happening. But I was very disappointed with where it ended as far as the plot was concerned. So I don't know whether or not I can recommend it yet. I guess it's the short story. Alright, that's all the books that I have that are physical copies. Let's move in to the ones that I don't have physical copies of, and I may or may not remember. Alright, I hope you're at the same angle. I got a new battery because I was afraid the other one was about to die. Alright. So in October I read Dracula. Every Halloween, every October I like to read one classic like monster or thriller kind of book. So this year I read Dracula. It was long. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I read it as an audiobook, which is why I don't have a copy. I kind of want a copy just because, like, I want to see physically how long it was, because dear Lord, it was long. But it was very interesting, but also it felt like 17 books. I think part of my problem with it is I've heard so many different vampire myths at this point. Kind of keeping track of what belonged where was difficult. It was really good though. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, like I said, it was just kind of challenging because I knew too many of the other myths that went along with Dracula and vampires and whatnot. Definitely recommend if you like long books that are written in kind of older English. In July, I read House in the Cerulean Sea, which, okay, it's supposed to be like a metaphor or an allegory for the like Indigenous schools in Canada, but the author never actually visited any Indigenous schools or like memorials or did much research, it seems like, at least from the articles I was seeing. So I'm not going to recommend it just for that. The story itself was very sweet, very cute. An oddball orphanage system in the UK has a government agency that keeps it in check, but they are kind of not super nice. Like they're fine, but they're just like a government agency. They're doing their job and not questioning it, kind of thing. But so then the main character gets assigned to like the worst school where they send the biggest troublemakers, and not that they're actual troublemakers, but the most complicated, most unusual children. And it ends up being, I feel like, more a metaphor for like LGBTQ kind of treatment, especially because then at the end there, or throughout the book really, there's a couple of dudes that are cute together and very interested in each other, and I won't spoil it if you do want to read it. But yeah, learning about the author being kind of like white savior-y when it comes to how he was handling, I don't know, it was kind of ruined it for me. The book is still cute if you can get past that. Then I read The Bear and the Nightingale. which is a book with a lot of different Russian folklore in it. It is the first in a series. I forget if it's a trilogy or what. Hopefully, future editing, Christiana is putting up pictures of these books. But yeah, it's about this girl who doesn't quite fit in because she's magical, and then things happen and they need her, even though they always wanted her to fit in. There's an evil stepmom in there too. I read When You Find Me in September. It was excellent. It was kind of a psychological thriller about this woman and her husband go to her home in South Carolina, I think, for Christmas, and then the husband goes missing. And turns out he was kind of abusive and also maybe cheating on her. But also maybe not. I don't want to spoil it. Like, some of these books, if you are familiar with the genre that they're in, like, you can figure it out. The tropes with thrillers is you want to try and figure it out on your own. This one, I sort of figured it out. Like, I was 75% sure that I knew what was at least one of the twists. I didn't get all of the twists, but I did guess one of them. I was pretty proud about that. Wasn't entirely sure that that was what it was going to be, but that one I read on audiobook. Excellent. In August I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which had a lot of good information, a lot of good points. I don't know that it was necessarily practical advice. Like, a lot of it was kind of still ideas, which is great, but I wish that there was some more practical advice, you know? Also found out the author has a lot of connections with multi-level marketing, MLMs, aka pyramid schemes. So then that kind of made me question a little bit more some of his ideas. In July, halfway through the year, I started marking down when I read these books, so that's why these ones I'm telling you. I read An Unkindness of Ghosts, which was excellent. It is set in a future on a spaceship, and you're following this girl and her friends as they're trying to solve a mystery. Things are going kind of weird on the ship. The main leader guy dies, and the person who takes over for him is crazy, not good person. But also, like, what are you gonna do? He's the leader of the book, or of the spaceship. I mean, it's not really like you can't just leave the spaceship, so her and her friends are trying to come up with a scheme to not have to be under him anymore. And it's another dystopian future. It is very well done. I was confused a lot throughout the book. Part of that I blame on reading it via audiobook, just because I would be driving and I'd be paying attention to the road and then realize that some stuff happened in the book that I should have been paying attention to and I was not. So then I'd have to go back and re-listen, and sometimes it still didn't make a lot of sense. At the end of the book it made sense, I think. Then also in July I read Treasure Island, a classic. I don't remember very much of it. You got some pirates, you got people chasing after the treasure. I remember thinking it was a lot of fun while I was reading it, but also, like, I gave away my physical copy of it because it was not one that I was going to read again. Definitely recommend for if you have any interest in pirates or the sea or treasure hunting. It is, quintessential. It is a classic pirate book. But also, maybe read it when you're a teenager. Yeah, Fortune says hi. In the first half of the year, because I didn't put a month on this one, I read The Office BFS, which is a book by Angela Kinsey and Jenna Fischer about their time on the show The Office. Angela Kinsey plays Angela Barton in The Office. Jenna Fischer played Pam. Of course, I'm talking about the American Office. I've been listening to the Office Ladies podcast featuring the two of them, or hosted by the two of them, since it came out. And then they wrote this book where they went into detail about some of the stories and everything. It was wonderful. I read it via audiobook. I read a lot of books via audiobook this year and every year. I love audiobooks. Anyway, they had some guest voices come on, actors and actresses from the show, but also Julia Gardner, I think that's who it was, did a little bit of it, which was great. I do kind of wish that I had the physical copy of that book, because apparently it has just like tons and tons of pictures that they took while they were on set. But when I went to buy it, before I decided to get the audiobook, it's larger than a typical book. Like, this ways it's larger, and this ways it's larger, and I don't know, I got the feeling I wouldn't like the way that it looked on my bookshelf, which is a dumb reason not to get a book, especially because I've got a lot of different shelves and places that I could put it. Maybe I'll still get it. I'll get it this year. Then I'll just look at all the pictures. But I had a lot of really good stories and insights into how The Office came to be, but also how their friendship came to be, and it was just real sweet. I read Mindful Communication, which was not memorable. I know that I read it via audiobook. I know that it had, that I thought it was going to have some great concepts that you could use in a variety of ways in different relationships and professional or personal kind of places in your life, and ended up not being that. And maybe if it was a little more memorable, I would be able to apply elements of it to my life. No. Also read No One Ever Taught Me How to Learn, which I thought would be a little bit more in-depth than it was. But it was very basic, like if you did okay in school and retained the knowledge that you were supposed to retain, at least like 50% of it, you don't need that book. I thought maybe it would help me retain information better, like it would have tips that you could kind of scale to where, like, so I kind of know how to learn, but with these tips I can learn and remember and apply concepts way better. No, it was very, very basic, which could be useful if that's what you were missing in school. However, I didn't. It's not useful for where I am in my life. I read The Red Badge of Courage. Where am I in my list? I read Red Badge of Courage, which is a novel set in the Civil War. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be middle grades or YA or what, but I feel like I was supposed to read it in middle school. it had too many descriptions of battle scenes for me. Those just do not keep my attention. If you like reading about battle scenes and the Civil War and war in general, you'll probably love it. I don't feel like I need to make a case for The Red Badge of Courage. It is a popular classic book. But yeah, whenever I read books that have battle scenes, a lot of times I just kind of skip over those. Like in Game of Thrones, anytime there's a big battle scene, I just kind of skipped it. I skimmed it. But Red Badge of Courage had a lot. And they're probably very well researched, probably very relevant, and if I was reading it for school, I could make connections between what I was learning in social studies about the Civil War and the class, and all of that great stuff. But it just did not, as an adult who is not also taking a social studies class, it did not do very much for me. It was good, and like if I could just take out all of the battle scenes, loved it. Very interesting story. You follow this like one character in his life through like while he was fighting in the Civil War. Very interesting. But if you take out all of the battle scenes, it's like 12 pages long. So 2 more books. Then I read the audiobook The Convenience Store Woman, which was very highly recommended all over BookTube and Book Talk for a while, which is the story of this woman who works in a convenience store, and she is very happy working in a convenience store. That is basically her whole life. Is she works, she goes home, she eats the same stuff all the time. She's happy. She enjoys that. But people around her in her life are always telling her that that's not enough, that she should be wanting more out of life, I guess. And so then she meets this dude who also doesn't really seem to want to be in a relationship. He's kind of, if you're familiar with the online meme of the neckbeard, kind of reminds me of that. It's like they kind of claim to really want to have girlfriends and relationships and stuff, but then the way that they talk about women, it's like, do you though? Because it kind of sounds like you really don't like women. Not like that you're gay, just that you have a disdain for the female person. The womanly gender, the feminine gender. But so anyway, they get together and they kind of make each other better, I guess. I don't know. It was very interesting, and I enjoyed reading it, and I liked the writing style, so I definitely want to read more by the author. But yeah, the book itself, I don't remember how it ends, and that's why I'm hesitant to say I recommend or don't recommend. I did read it as part of my 7 books in 7 days video challenge, so maybe go back and watch that. And then the last book on my list is called Measure What Matters, which is another professional development book about how to pick the right kind of KPIs, the right metrics for your team and all of that. I don't remember reading this book at all. I sort of remember what the cover looks like, and so I know that since it's not on my shelf upstairs, I must have given it away in my little library's book on haul. But yeah, I've got no recollection of reading this book. So that's all the books that I read in 2022. I'm guessing that I read him. Some of them. Yeah, I just don't remember. Which is really weird. Like throughout the year even, there were times where I picked books up off my shelf and be like, oh, I should read this. And then I start reading it and be like, I would realize, oh, I already read this book. So my memory is failing. For the last, I think 3 years, the way that I've been recording what books I've been reading, it's just in a notes app on my phone. And I want to record it in a better way this year, but I don't know what that's going to be. I know a lot of people really love Storygraph. I kind of think maybe I'll just make a spreadsheet where I can put like the date that I started the book, the date that I finished the book, and some general thoughts to make this easier, you know? Maybe have like page counts in there because I think that would be interesting. That's where I am. What books did you read this year? Anything good? Anything you'd like to recommend? I'm always looking for book recommendations. If you saw my priorities for 2023, you know I want to read at least one book a month, but especially once my classes slow down, I'm planning on reading a lot more than that. Maybe next year I'll break 50 again, which I haven't done since I think 2020, which I guess isn't that long ago. I'm gonna start taking down my Christmas decorations and start decorating for Valentine's Day. I don't even know. What am I supposed to do for the rest of winter? I can't just have an undecorated house. That sounds awful. So we'll see what happens. But I will see you tomorrow for another video, the last video of this week, and then we're switching back to 1 to 2 videos per week until I have more time and brain power back. Good night, sweet dreams. See you soon. Forgot to do a thumbnail, so this is the thumbnail.